Now, after winning a national championship at Michigan this past season, Jim Harbaugh decided to return to the NFL world as he was hired by the Chargers to be their new head coach. And while Justin Herbert has quickly become one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL ever since he was drafted, LA really hasn't seen much success during his tenure there. And with the hiring of Jim Harbaugh, a lot of people believe that he is going to turn them around and that the Chargers will make the playoffs in 2024. So in today's video, I really just wanted to come on here and talk about how good I think the Chargers are going to be in their first year under Jim Harbaugh. But yeah, before we do get started, of course, go ahead and hit that like button since it really does help out the channel. And of course, subscribe if you guys are new and you guys enjoy content like this. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get the video started. Now, offensively, we all know how good Justin Herbert is. There's always going to be those guys who try to degrade him for his lack of team success, and while I actually do believe wins are a quarterback stat, they aren't the only stat to look at when evaluating quarterbacks, and outside of wins, he has everything you want from a QB. And even then, the lack of winning for the most part really isn't on Justin Herbert, and, there really isn't much to say about him besides the fact that he's an elite quarterback. Now, I do think LA will have a pretty dominant rushing offense this year, as they signed both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and both of those guys are really good players. The main caveat with J.K. Dobbins is that he is extremely injury prone. But when he's on the field, he's a really good player, so if he can stay healthy, then I do think J.K. Dobbins is going to be in for a pretty good season. And I also do think that Kamani Vidal, coming out of Troy, is a real sleeper despite the fact that he was a late round pick. But if Kamani Vidal can get some playing time this year, then I think he has a chance to do some real damage. But even then, even if he doesn't do that much in his rookie season, if he does stick around, in the future and he does get playing time, then I do think Kamani Vidal could be a staple of the Chargers offense. And Justin Herbert himself, he's also quite mobile, and I do expect him to be used a lot in the run game this year, as LA did hire Greg Roman to be their offensive coordinator, and while he definitely has flaws as an OC, namely, his passing offenses, if there is one thing that he does specialize in, it is the run game. Greg Roman is really good when it comes to, designing good rushing offenses, and I think the combination of him, along with the additions of JK and Gus Edwards, will lead to the Chargers, having a good ground game. And again, Justin Herbert, he's pretty mobile as well. And I also do think that the Chargers offensive line has quite a bit of promise, as they already had Rashawn Slater, who's one of the best tackles in the NFL. They drafted Joe Alt in the first round of this past year's NFL draft, and Joe Alt, he was maybe a generational tackle prospect coming out of Notre Dame, and I think Joe Alt is quickly going to become one of the best tackles in the NFL. It really just comes down to, how the interior plays, because the Chargers tackles are really good. But when you look at the interior, Bradley Bozeman, he's okay, but nothing crazy. Same deal with Jamari Salyer, another okay, but, not exactly a great player. And then Zion Johnson, he's also been pretty mid so far in his young NFL career. But with that said, he was a first-round pick in 2022 for a reason, and who knows, maybe this upcoming year is, the season when Zion Johnson puts it all together and he does break out. I'm not going to give up on Zion Johnson just yet, but I do think 2024 is a make or break season for him. Now, by far the biggest X factor for the Chargers offense is going to be their receiving weapons, as they lost both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen this offseason, and as it stands right now, LA's wide receiving core is one of the worst in the entire NFL. Now, I do like Ladd McConkey, and I think he's going to be a pretty good player. Josh Palmer, though, he's fine, but nothing special. DJ Chark is also just okay. And then Quentin Johnston, he needs to step it up because he was straight up awful last season. Now, me personally, I thought he was overrated coming out of TCU, and again, his rookie season, it was bad. But with all that said, I never thought Quentin Johnston was a horrible prospect coming out of TCU, and I'm not going to give up on him just yet. I do think he will be better in 2024. The question is, how much better is he going to be? Because he has to step it up, but if he can step up to being at least a good wide receiver too, then I think that is a pretty solid leap. But hopefully for the Chargers' sake and Justin Herbert's sake, Quentin Johnston steps up in 2024. And to round out the wide receiving core, I also do think that Brendan Rice, another late round pick, I think he could also be a steal if he does make the Chargers roster. And me personally, I'm surprised he fell all the way to the 7th round, but I'm rooting for him, and I hope he does make the Chargers roster. And I do hope that he does, show some flashes in his first year. And as for the Chargers tight ends, well, they're pretty mid. Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst, they really aren't that special. Now, while LA does have pretty, bad weapons as of right now, I do think the Chargers offense, I don't think it's going to be complete trash. As again, they got a really good rushing attack. And then along with that, they got Justin Herbert, who's an elite quarterback. And he's a guy who can do more with less. And he can elevate the team around him, even when, there are holes on the roster. So again, that combination of the rushing offense and having Justin Herbert is going to boost LA's offense, in my opinion, to being at least average. It really just comes down to, again, how good are their weapons going to be. Now, the Chargers defense last year was pretty bad overall. I mean, they did have some positives while, being about average when it came to stopping the run and being about average on third down. And they were good in the red zone. But for the most part, their defense was pretty bad. Part of it was definitely a talent issue, as they did have some holes on their roster defensively, but I also do think a large part of it was coaching, as Brandon Staley, he was obviously a horrible head coach, and he was touted as a defensive mastermind, yet despite the fact that he was touted as one, the Chargers' defenses under him were never good. Now, they do have some bright spots defensively, as they do have pretty good edge rushers, as Khalil Mack, despite the fact that he is pretty old, he's still one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. And then you got Joey Bosa, who he's extremely injury prone and he has declined the last few years. But with that said, when he's healthy, he's still a solid player. The problem is, he's just usually not healthy. And then they got Tuli Tuipulotu, who had a really good rookie season, and I liked him a lot coming out of USC, and I think he's only going to get better from here on out. And they signed Bud Dupree, who's a pretty good depth piece. They also do have pretty good linebackers, as Denzel Perryman, they recently reunited with him this offseason, and, he is pretty bad in coverage, but he is a good run stopper. They did draft Junior Colson, who obviously has ties to Jim Harbaugh, as, well, he went to Michigan for college, and Junior Colson was one of the best linebackers in the entire 2024 NFL draft, and they still do have Dayon Henley from Washington State, who they drafted in the 2023 NFL draft, and I don't know how much playing time he'll get this season, but I mean, I liked him coming out of Washington State and think that, he could be a decent contributor. And they do have pretty nice safeties, as Derwin James, he had a down season in 2024, but for the most part, he is one of the best safeties in the entire NFL. And they got Alohi Gilman, who he played pretty well last year. But with that said, they do have some holes defensively, as the interior of their D-line, it sucks, to say the least. I mean, the three guys slated to be their three starting defensive tackles are Morgan Fox, Poona Ford, and Otito Ogbonia. And Morgan Fox, he's okay. Poona Ford, though, he's not very good. And Otito Ogbonia, he really hasn't done anything in his short NFL career. And I highly doubt he's going to turn into, Aaron Donald this upcoming season. But besides defensive tackle, cornerback is also a big question mark, as Asante Samuel Jr., he's probably their best cornerback right now, and he's okay, but he's nothing special, and he's nothing, he's okay, he's nothing crazy. They got Christian Fulton as well, and he started off his career pretty well, but he's fallen off the last 2 years, and he's also struggled with injuries, but who knows, maybe on this 1-year prove-it contract that he's on, he can ball out in 2024. And then Jasir Taylor is currently slotted to be their other starting cornerback, and he's okay, but, he's nothing special. Now, I would like to say that, they did draft Cam Hart coming out of Notre Dame in this past year's NFL draft, and I liked Cam Hart coming out of ND. I think he could be a pretty good player. I don't know how much playing time he'll get in his first year, but who knows, maybe in the future Cam Hart does go on to be a pretty big staple of LA's defense. But while the Chargers do have some holes, I definitely think they have the talent to be at least an average unit. But with that said, I wouldn't expect them to be an elite unit, but I do think it is very possible that the Chargers are like an average to above average unit, and maybe with good coaching, they can finally reach that level. Now, at first, I didn't know what to think about the Jim Harbaugh hiring, but as time has gone on, I've grown to really like it. I mean, every single place that Jim Harbaugh has gone, he's made them a good team, whether that be college or the NFL. I mean, he made Stanford a good team. He did the same with the 49ers. He did the same with Michigan and obviously won a national championship with them. And I know Jim was in the college game for the past 9 years, but he has NFL coaching experience, and I think he will be able to readjust to the NFL. And me personally, I do think that eventually Jim Harbaugh will turn around LA, and that the Chargers will become a good team under him. But in regards to how good I think they're going to be in 2024, this upcoming season, I think the Chargers will be better than they were last season. I think they'll be a lot more competitive. However, I think they're going to be an okay team. They're going to win like 7 to 9 games. There are things to like about them, like Jim himself, Justin Herbert. Again, I think they got a nice ground game. I think their offensive line has a lot of promise, and they got some nice pieces on defense. But the Chargers, at the end of the day, they aren't the most talented team. And the AFC, it is a really loaded conference. And while great quarterback play and, great coaching can, a lot of times lead to, teams with less talent making it further than they should. And while great quarterback play and great coaching can elevate teams, I do think that eventually, at some point, the lack of talent will go on to bite the Chargers in the ass. But with that said, the Chargers, I think they will be a lot better compared to how they were last season. And again, I do think Jim Harbaugh, he will make them a good team. But, it does take time to build, good teams. And I do think the Chargers need at least one more year before they become a serious threat. But going over their schedule, they obviously play the Chiefs twice a year, and the Chiefs, well, they're the Chiefs. But that said, I'm not too high on the Broncos or the Raiders. And me personally, I think LA is going to win like 2 to 3 of their divisional games. The AFC North is also a really tough division, and I think the Chargers are going to win like 1 to 2 of those games. The NFC South, though, they are a really bad division. I mean, the only good teams in that division, I'd say, are like the Buccaneers and Falcons. And even then, those teams are just solid. They really aren't special. So I think LA is going to win like 2 to 3 of the NFC South games. And then their last 3 games come up against the Titans, Patriots, and Cardinals. And all 3, they are winnable. But personally, I'd say the Chargers probably win like 2 of those games. I also think that it's possible that they lose 2 of them, but I think they'll probably win like 2 of those games. I mean, upsets do happen, so that's why I think the Chargers won't win all 3 of those. But if I had to give like a floor for how many games I think LA is gonna win this upcoming season, I'd say it's probably like 7 wins. And then I think their ceiling, though, is probably like 10 wins, and there is a world where they do make the playoffs, obviously. However, me personally, I would bet that they probably just miss out on it. But in 2025, I think the Chargers will probably make the playoffs. But that's pretty much all I got to say for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really does mean a lot to me. Again, like, subscribe, do all of that. And then check me out on social media. The links to my Twitter and Instagram are in the description below. But without further ado, I'm out, you guys.